Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another wonderful Cook Along Live. I'm your host, Rob Sogamonian. Today, we're going to be making coq au vin, which is chicken in red wine. So we're going to be playing with some chicken today. Technically, it's rooster in a red wine sauce, and you can see my cat's tail going there behind me. Sharking around. She's looking for some attention. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, I do know that on the West Coast, here in California, in the Bay Area, there is a football game going on. It's a playoff game between the 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. So I know that there are probably not a lot of my usual cohort of friends and family on watching, but if you're here, go ahead and say hi. Otherwise, I'll catch you on the replay. So coq au vin is kind of a rustic chicken dish. It's like a braised chicken stew. Really, really tasty. And it is cooked so that the wine is cooked off, or the alcohol is cooked off out of the wine. And we're going to go ahead and get started with that. Now, I did ask you in the ingredients, what do you think you're doing? Cameo from the cat. Come on, go away. Off. Silly cat. So, I did ask you to get a whole chicken for your ingredients. If you didn't, if you just have thighs or if you just have chicken breasts, that's fine. But using the whole chicken is a lot cheaper, actually goes a lot farther, and gives you much more meat than if you are just using pre-cut pieces, pre-cut stuff. So we're going to go ahead and grab our chicken. And actually, going to grab this cutting board here. And we're going to butcher it on something else so I can just move this and continue with all the veggies and everything on the main cutting board. So let's go ahead and grab this bad boy. Now, chicken is great. It's actually super easy to break down. It's a lot easier than the stores would make you think. And really what we're going to do is we're going to start by taking off the wings. And what I like to do is kind of take the chicken and kind of point it towards me, like so. And then I just go and find right where the joint is. You can see where the flap is, or where the joint is, just by moving the wing. As you move the wing, you can see that the elbow is right here, and the main part of the joint is kind of right here. So you can just take your knife and kind of cut in there, and just kind of follow that bend, and you should be able to just kind of pop the socket right out and get the knife in between. And it's awkward trying to cut this for a camera. Let's go ahead and get right through it. And then there's one wing off. We're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Let's switch to this one. Maybe you can see it a little bit better. Ooh, it's a little bit laggy. I'll have to work on that. You can see right here where the joint is, and we can cut right down into it. And then you can pretty much find where the knuckle is, or where the actual joint is. You can either just bend it backwards until it pops out of the socket and then just slice through it, or you can just use the pressure of your knife to go right through it. And then we have two wings. Now what we're going to do with those wings is actually get them sauteing already. We're going to get them sauteing right away. I'm going to put this on just like a medium-high. Add a little bit of olive oil, and I'm just using my non-chicken hand on this. I've been holding the chicken itself with this left hand, so I'm just doing all the other stuff with my right hand. I am going to season these wings just a bit with some salt, like so. There we go. Interesting that this one is smoother than the other one. Not quite sure what's going on with that camera up there. Well, that's what you get when you do it live. We're going to go ahead and also salt this backside of the chicken wing as well. And we're going to go just until our oil gets kind of shimmery and moves around less like a thick kind of paste and more like water. When you can do that and just kind of see it slide around in the pan, you'll notice that it's kind of shimmering. Don't know that it's coming through on the camera, but you can see just a kind of very light shimmer as the oil kind of spreads out from the heat. That's perfect. We're going to go ahead and put in our chicken wings. You don't need to put pepper on these. We just want to get these in to start getting some caramelization on them. And I'm just going to put them at opposite sides of the pan. You want to hear a sizzle when you put them in. That means that they are cooking and searing, and that's what we want. Very similar to the chicken enchilada soup that we made last week. We want these to create a fond on the bottom of the pan. So that's what we're doing with all of our chicken. Now we're going to take our chicken and we're going to turn it on its side, like so. Either side, doesn't matter. And we're going to lift up on the leg, and you're going to notice that when you lift up on the leg, actually go back here, when you lift up on the leg, the chicken kind of hangs, and again, you can see right where you need to cut along the breast to get into that thigh. We're going to go like that, and we're just going to cut right around this cavity, and we're going to come right up the back of the chicken as well, getting all the way up against the carcass. You should be able to see in here, we're going all the way almost up against its butt. Now we're going to come up on this side, and we're going to cut around the meat on this side. Right here in the back is where the chicken tenderloin is. They call it the oyster. It's a little muscle that's kind of right in the back here. And we're going to carve around that. Up along the body, like so. So you can see that we've almost gone all the way around the thigh. Now at this point, you can actually hold the chicken down with a knife, grab the thigh, grab kind of the knee, and just bend it backwards. And the whole thing will actually pop right out of its socket. And then you can just peel it away from the chicken. And there we go. I'm going to turn this down just a bit. Because you do want it cooking, you do want it creating that fond on the bottom of the pan, but you don't want to burn it. So I'm going to get this down to, let's say, like 325 or so. I'd say like a medium. We're getting a little bit of smoke, but we don't want to start burning. Same thing on this other thigh. We're going to lift it up like so. The chicken is going to kind of weigh itself down, and we're going to just kind of start cutting right where this skin is and separating it from the body. We're going to come around the back. We're going to cut into where that oyster is, and you can see that the oyster is kind of right here, and it actually goes into the back of the chicken just a bit. You can slide your knife right up against it, right behind it, and you actually get a nice little cut of tenderloin meat right there. Really cool. A lot of people don't know that that's there. Now we're going to cut up this skin section here and do the same thing that we did on the other side and just kind of cut along the cavity all the way up until we hit the joint, at which point, again, we've separated almost everything except for that little flap of skin right there. And then we can just kind of pop the joint out of its socket and either pull it just to, kind of separate it from the chicken, or just run your knife right into the joint and you get another chicken thigh. You get a thigh and a drumstick. Now we've got two breasts here, which we're going to get to, but what I want to do is actually separate these out. So, while I'm waiting, or I should say while that is cooking, before I burn it, I'm going to run over here and slide some stuff out of the way and grab my tongs. You'll have to excuse me, I am running just a little bit behind today as well. Had a couple of things pop up and kind of kept me from doing my usual prep work. So we can see that our chicken wings are starting to brown. This is great. While the chicken wings are browning, our thighs and our drumsticks here, you can see where the joint is on the drumstick. Like it's right where the actuation spot is. Again, we're just going to kind of hold up the drumstick, and right where the joint is, right where the fold is, we're going to cut straight, or yeah, basically straight down. You will find where the joint is inside the muscle, and then just cut right through it. And then you get a drumstick and a thigh. Two separate pieces of meat. I'm going to go ahead and put my thighs in. Do the same thing over here really quick. Get these guys seasoned up just a bit. Same thing on the back. And then we're going to go ahead and just place our thighs skin side down in the pan. If you don't have skin, if you're using boneless, skinless, or something like that, don't worry. Put it on the meat side down first. We're going to let all of this keep cooking and caramelizing. Now, on the drumstick, one thing you can do if you'd like, you can actually remove the drumstick part of it just by using the heel of your knife and finding the thinnest part here and just slamming right through it. And then you should be able to cut the stick off of the drumstick. And that actually helps with the tendons on the bottom. It'll help the meat kind of separate from the bone. And we're going to get these guys seasoned up as well and into the pan. Just like this. One there. One over there. Perfect. Just going to check the back side of my wings. They're browning as well, so I'm just going to give them another little flip. I'm all right with these guys getting pretty darn brown. I just don't want to blacken them or burn them. Now looking at the rest of our chicken, all we really have left are the breasts. I'm going to put this over here on the side just to get it out of the way. For the breasts, you want to come in right here where the wing attaches to the main part of the body, cavity. And we're just going to cut horizontally backwards. And that's going to start releasing the breast from the carcass. And you want to cut in until you feel the bone. And what you're feeling is usually the wishbone. And then you're just going to follow the body. Lift up with your thumb. And just cut that breast right off. Like so. Through the skin. And then we're going to cut back like this. Now, leave hitting part of the breastbone, so I'm just going to cut around it. And there we go. One breast is off. And it's about time to sharpen my knives. One beautiful chicken breast. And then we're going to do the other one the same way. We're going to cut down the breastbone and just kind of follow the breastbone and follow the wishbone, down over to the right, and then just cut through. And then same thing, we're going to cut up along the body. To get that breast off. Like so. And there's two breasts. Now we've got a wonderful carcass here that we can freeze, or if we're going to make stock, we might want to just turn this into chicken stock right now. Throw it into a pot, fill it with some water, some herbs and veggies, and get it simmering. I'm going to just set it on the side for now, and then I will worry about that later. So for the breasts, I'm actually going to cut them in half, just to make them a little bit smaller, and leave the skin on. There we go. And we're going to get these guys seasoned, and we're going to put them in the pan as well. Right now, I'm just using salt. You can add pepper if you want. I think that you can actually burn the pepper since we're kind of, cooking it for a while in the pan. So I usually wait until the end to season with the pepper on this particular dish. And you can see here we've got 4 portions just from the breasts. We've got 4 portions from the drumsticks and the thighs. So that's 8 portions. And then we've got the drumsticks, which you can kind of snack on or serve them as their own portions, maybe for kids. So you can have potentially 10 portions on this. And then if somebody wants like a quarter breast, I mean, you can go up to, 8 portions on these if you really want to. Kind of up to you and how you want to do that. So the difficult part about this dish is actually finding enough room in the pan because you're putting a whole chicken in here. So what I'm going to do is, now that I've got my wings and the drumsticks and the thighs kind of browned on one side, I am going to arrange them so that the meat side, or the bone side, I should say, on the thighs, is more on the edges of the pan. I'm not so concerned right now with getting all that fond in there because I've already gotten a lot off of the skin. But I'm going to take my breasts and I'm going to lay them down, skin side down, and start getting some more fond going here. We are going to be crowding the pan just a bit. Not ideal, but can't really be helped in this case. And actually what I might do is pop the wings out, since they're nice and caramelized. And we'll just play Tetris with this last piece of the breast. There we go. Perfect. Now we've got all of the chicken in here. We've already got the wings cooked, so we don't have to worry too much about those. And don't worry about moving something from a cooked pan back onto a dirty, cutting board if you're going to recook it. And we're actually going to take all of this chicken off and later put it back into some braising liquid and really kind of build some of that flavor. But it's going to cook any bacteria that comes from this board off. It's going to kill it. So don't worry too much about that if you plan to put it back into a cooking vessel and recook it. So the fact that I put the chicken wings over there doesn't bother me at the moment. And what I'm going to do is grab my trusty sheet pan and use a paper towel or two on the sheet pan just to set the chicken on it so that it can just sit on the side and kind of rest a little bit while we build some more flavor in this pan. So there we go. Again, this is all going to go right back into the pan once we have other things in there cooked. So don't worry too much about that being dirty. And then we're going to get this cutting board out of the way. I'm actually going to take you with me to the sink cam. We're going to wash our hands. All of that chicken goobers all over them. Not a good look. Especially since we're going to be doing a little bit more chopping with other things. And we don't want to get any of that chicken, at least the raw chicken, mixed in. So we've got the raw cutting board. We're washing our hands with some good soap, hot water. And we will move on with our coq au vin. And if you can't say coq au vin, or if you just don't like it, you could just say chicken in red wine, because that's really what it means. Or I guess it means rooster, because that's what a coq is, but it's all the same. It's a bird. It's a fowl. Fowl braised in red wine. And we will switch back to here. All right, there we go. Hands are good. Gonna wipe off the knife. We're gonna put this in the sink as well. And we'll get that really clean a little bit later. Get some of this extra salt off of the cutting board. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and just check on my drumsticks. Rotate them. Get a little bit more of that browning on. I'm going to check on my breasts. Ooh, that one looks good. Get that flipped. Good amount of browning going. Again, we're not trying to cook the chicken in this. We're just trying to get some of the flavor from the skin, some of that fond built on the bottom of the pan, so that when we add more things to it, it releases and it just adds to the flavor of the overall dish. There we go. Ooh, look at that one. I'll turn this one back around because it's not quite brown enough. I'll move this a little bit more centered. Get this kind of switched around. There we go. All right, so I'm also going to really quickly clean off my chef's knife, cutting off the knuckles on the chicken drumettes. Can be a bit messy. We'll go ahead and just get that off. A little bit of soap. And there we go. Good as new. And we're back over here. Guess we can leave the food in. You'll notice that as they're cooking, they're actually going to shrink. A lot of that water content is going to come off. Just kind of steam away. And that is totally fine. While we're waiting on that, we're going to go back and grab that cutting board because we're not quite done with the meat. We have rinsed it off just a bit, but there's still a little bit of chicken on it, which is fine. Again, we're going to be cooking what we cut on it. Just kind of getting some of the moisture off. There we go. And we're going to take our 8 ounces of bacon and cut it into smaller pieces because we're going to put this into the pan next. We're going to take the chicken out, let it kind of sit on the side, add the bacon, build some more fond flavor. And it's really going to kind of elevate our dish a little bit. Now, I used to spend a ton of time taking the bacon and separating it out. When I put it in, making sure that it doesn't go in a clump. Honestly, it doesn't matter. As the bacon cooks and it starts rendering down, as that fat comes out, it's going to naturally separate. So you don't have to worry too much about keeping each individual piece separate from each other. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my bacon longwise and just cut it down the middle once. And it is really about time I sharpen these knives. There we go. So now I've got 2 halves of bacon strips. And then I'm going to turn it 90 degrees this way and cut it into little, I'm going to say 1/2 inch to 1 inch slices. And this will help it brown and dissolve kind of into the water or into the braising liquid as it cooks down. There we go. I'm just going to set that right there for now. You go ahead and flip that breast. There we go. That's a nice golden brown. Let's check some of these other guys. They're getting good too. Oh, yes. That was great. That one's not that great, but this one's good. And that one. And that's all looking really good. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to pull the chicken out. The pieces that I'm happy with, like this one's nice and golden brown. I'm going to get that out here onto the tray. This one looks all right, so I'm going to pull this out onto the tray. That's also a good one. None of these chicken pieces are cooked all the way through. Like, I can just tell by looking at them and kind of squeezing them. They are absolutely raw in the middle still, which is fine. We don't need them cooked all the way through because, again, they're going to be braising in the pan. But now what we have is a beautiful fond on our pan. And what we can use that for is to build more flavor. So while this is kind of sizzling away, I'm going to go ahead and put my bacon right in. And we're going to just cook this until it gets nice and evenly browned. We're just building an additional layer of fond and an additional layer of flavor. I'm going to grab a spatula and just kind of flatten it out. I don't need to separate every last piece of bacon or anything like that. I just want to kind of get it in one even-ish layer. Something like that. And we're cooking it like a medium, just above medium to medium high. And we're just going to let this bacon crisp up and render down. Now we're going to move this and actually keep it over here. There we go. I'm also going to clean off my knife, so I'll bring you all with me. How's your week been? Mine was a little bit busy. I was in Austin for the week, doing some training for my day job, leadership training. Was very educational, very informative, and a lot of fun, actually. I love training, love learning new things. And then I got back yesterday and had a bunch of stuff to do. Tried getting some of it done, but then other things came up. I'm a real estate agent and kind of like a leader in our office. We had a gala to go to for the new board of directors for the local association, so I had to go out to that. And then everything that I didn't finish yesterday, I had to try to get wrapped up today. And I was just working on that until about 3 o'clock, so I was cutting it pretty close. Usually I have a bit more prep time for these. But you got to do what you got to do. All right. Knife's clean, hands are clean, back to the cutting boards. Give that a quick stir. And we'll switch down over here. So you can see that I still have the carcass over here. I'm not really doing anything with it. And then I'm just keeping my spatula and the tongs elevated off of any surface. Because, you know, raw chicken on that side, a little bit of raw bacon on that side. Don't want to worry, don't want to stress about that, you know, sitting on a surface. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get ready to do our last layer of fondant here. After the bacon browns. And for that, what we're going to need is an onion, or half an onion, actually. So what I'm going to do is just cut right down the onion, vertically like that. Set that half over there. Peel off the skin from this half. And I'm going to just take off the barest end of the root end, but I still want the root there, because I want this to hold together. And I'm going to take off just about a 1/4 inch off the top, so I have a nice flat cutting surface over here. This also allows me to get under that first layer of skin and just peel it back. And it makes peeling an onion fairly easy. Sometimes you'll notice that the next layer of skin also has like the leathery skin on it, so you can just grab that and peel it back. I will always just go, you know, down until there's no more skin, and then the skin goes into the compost. Bacon is starting to sizzle a little bit less, which is awesome. Now, we've done onions a lot on this show. I've showed you how to cut an onion a ton of different ways, a ton of different times. And today's no exception. We're going to cut about 90% of the way through, so something like that. Not all the way through. You may want to do 2 if it's a very big onion. And again, you're going to go like almost all the way through, but not totally through, because you want the onion to stay together. And then we're just going to cut straight down from the top. Like so. Don't worry too much about this onion being super thin. it's going to cook down when we add it to the pan anyway. So as long as you have it kind of diced, you're good. And if any pieces come off because you cut through it, it's okay. Don't worry. Just set them up in line with everything else. Turn it 90 degrees again. And then we'll just cut through from the top down. Always cut with your fingers in a claw shape, kind of like this, rolled back. And what that allows you to do is use your knuckles as a guide, and then it's very, very, very difficult to cut yourself unless the knife slips. But if you have a sharp knife, that should almost never happen. And then also keep your thumb behind your fingers. You use them as kind of a guard, and you'll never nick your thumb. There we go, and then we can cut this way when we get to the very end of it. And then we're left with very, very little waste, which is awesome. You get more onion. More onion for your dollar. Let's go ahead and give this a nice little stir. Bacon is browning very nicely. And we're getting that additional layer of fond on the bottom of the pan. You'll notice that all the bacon's separated on its own. You're not going to have like big hunks that are just stuck together, especially if you keep it moving. It'll just kind of naturally separate as the oils come out. Just going to give this a couple more minutes. I don't need too much more time on that. And while I'm waiting on that, I'm going to go ahead and come over here and chop my shallots. And I just want sliced shallots. We're not going to be dicing this or anything like that. So what I want to do is cut my shallots in half, very similar to the onion. Go from the root end all the way up to the tip. Peel off the kind of thick layers, the ones that might be either leathery skin or even just kind of drying out and starting to become skin. We're just going to go ahead and peel those off, like so. We want 2 shallots, so here's our second one. Same thing. And just peel off those layers of skin. Our bacon is looking really nice. And then peel off the layers of skin over here as well. All right. I think our bacon is done. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the pan, or turn off the burner for the pan. And I'm going to get a bowl of some kind. We'll just use this bad boy. And yes, I know, paper towels. Just going to go ahead and make a little well with my paper towel. We switch to the top-down view, just creating a little bit of a holding spot for our bacon. Now I'm going to take this whole thing with all of the grease and everything, and just very gently pour it into the bowl. Because there is a lot of fat in the pan, and that's way more than we need. We're going to go ahead and do some draining off. You'll notice that we have a really nice looking fond here in the middle of the pan. The pan is still hot, so be careful. I want to get as much of that bacon out as I can. There we go. And now I can actually lift up the paper towel, and I'll have a lot of bacon, but not very much fat. Not very much of that oil is going to be left. It's all going to go through into the bowl. I just want a touch of it in here. Maybe like a tablespoon. Something like that. And then I'll just set that right there for now. We'll get this back going. And we're going to go ahead and add our onion. And your onion should start sizzling. You may want to turn the temperature down to like a medium because we want to sweat our onions, but we don't, I mean, we are going to caramelize the onions, but we don't want them to caramelize super quick. I'm going to add just a little bit of salt so that the onions start to kind of release some of their moisture as they cook. And then we're just going to go through and chop our shallots, like slice through them once. So this should go pretty quick. And shallots are very similar to onions in that they will break down as they cook. So they don't have to be super, like, you know, paper thin or anything like that. But you do want your onions to be sizzling. So make sure you have it at a heat where it's just kind of like a very low, gentle sizzle. And then we'll cut through our shallots. Then you can kind of add them into the pan as you go if you'd like. There we are. And there we are. Fight the urge to cry. Just always makes me so sad when I cut shallots and onions. Ugh. All right. Now, as these release their moisture, they're going to pick up a lot of the fond that we've kind of broken down from the chicken and the bacon. All of that's going to start releasing because the moisture is going to come down. It's going to start steaming, and all that fond is going to start breaking up off of the bottom of the pan. But you don't want to cook this too hot because if you burn your onions and your shallots, you're actually just going to be adding onto the fond. You're not going to allow it to release. We're going to go ahead and break up our shallots just a bit. And very similar to our chicken enchilada soup last week, you're going to notice that your onions are going to start turning like almost a golden color. And it's not because they're browning themselves, it's because of all of the drippings that are releasing from the bottom of the pan, all of that fond. And that is exactly what we want. Yum. All right, I'm going to add just a little bit more salt. And at this point, since we're just kind of simmering on like a low, I'm going to put in a little bit of fresh ground pepper. Because I don't really have a risk of burning it at this point. And then just make sure you keep it moving. Whether you're tossing it or whether you're using a spatula or a wooden spoon or something to keep it going, just make sure you keep it moving. And break up the shallot bits as you go. Again, as they cook, they'll release easier and easier as they soften. So if they don't immediately pop apart, don't worry too much. Just give it a couple minutes and then go through and tap on them to separate. All right. Now I'm going to take my bacon if there's any additional grease like sitting in the towel in like a puddle, I'm going to very gently kind of pour it out, which is what I'm doing right here. Being careful not to drop too much of the bacon into the grease that's in the actual bowl. And I'm just going to add the bacon back into the pan. There we go. I have a couple of pieces down at the bottom. I'm just going to try and scoop them out. I'm not going to worry too much if I can't get them out, but I do like bacon. I don't think it's the end-all, be-all of food. Might be an unpopular opinion there, but I think it's tasty. And there we go. I'm going to take this bowl. I'm actually going to set it next to the chicken because it's got some grease on the bottom. If it drips down onto the plate, I'm okay with it. Sop up whatever fell onto the cutting board, as well as everything that's splattering out of the pan. It happens. It's cooking. And then we'll just keep that moving. All right, so now I'm starting to get some toasty edges on my onions, which is great because we're starting to caramelize the onions. We're actually building another small layer of fond, and that is what you want, but we're not going to let these go too far. We actually want the onions to just be maybe a little bit golden brown, but not like caramelized. So I'm just going to kind of keep that moving. While that's going, I am going to come down and grab some flour. All-purpose flour works, bread flour works, doesn't really matter what kind of flour, but you want about 2 tablespoons of flour, or I'm sorry, 2 teaspoons of flour. Just kind of dust it over everything in the pan. Again, usually I would have that kind of in a separate bowl, but since I was a little pressed for time today, I didn't have time for that. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of stir that in. And what this is going to do is take that raw flour flavor off of the flour. And then what I'm going to do is add about 2 teaspoons of butter. We're going to go ahead and melt that in. And what we're doing is we're creating a little bit of a roux. The butter and the flour will work together to thicken up our red wine sauce. Go ahead and get this all stirred through. Once the butter has melted, we're going to take our chicken stock. Should be about 8 ounces. If you want, you can add a little bit more just so that it has more time to kind of cook off. And we're going to add our cold chicken stock into our hot pan. And again, that helps with releasing some of that fond off of the bottom. And we're going to immediately just start scraping the edges, scraping the bottom of the pan. If you have a wooden spoon, it actually works better than a silicone spatula because it really kind of grabs the bottom and scrapes off that fond. But even as this kind of comes up to a boil, a lot of that fond is going to cook off anyway. So don't worry too much if all you've got is a silicone spatula. I mean, that's what I'm using tonight, so you'll be fine. We'll go there. I'm going to turn this up to like a medium high or a high because I want to get it kind of simmering. And then I'm going to turn it down to a low and just let it simmer away. Now, this would not be chicken in red wine if we didn't have some red wine. So I'm just using a Cabernet. You can use a Pinot, a Cabernet. I mean, you could use white wine if you want. I prefer red in this type of a dish, and traditionally it's red. We're just going to go ahead and get this open. You can see that this has started to boil, so what I'm going to do is bring it down to just a simmer. Nice little gentle simmer. While I get this bottle of wine open. There we go. 1 and 2. Beautiful. Now we want about 1.5 cups, so that's about 16 ounces. I'm just going to use the same measuring cup we used for the chicken stock. And I'm sorry, it's not 16 ounces, it's going to be 12 ounces. We'll go in with 8. And then we'll go in with 4. And then again, we're going to let that come back up to a simmer. Probably on high. But we do want to get this stirred through. There we go. Now, we move on to our mushrooms. I like to just kind of brush them off with my hands. If there's any dirt on, they should come off. You shouldn't really rinse mushrooms because they could absorb a lot of that moisture, and you'll end up with a dish that's a lot more kind of wet and soggy than what the recipe might be calling for. And what I like to do is just kind of cut off, even with the bottom of the mushroom, the stems. The reason I do it this way is because I can put them flat down on a cutting board and cut through them or slice through them, like so. And it doesn't rock around or roll all over the place. And I still get that classic mushroom shape with the stalk like in the middle of it. So that's how I like to do it. If you like to keep them, you know, the stems whole, that's totally up to you. But we're not going to be slicing our mushrooms for this dish. You could, and I did, but I wanted to demonstrate why I take the stem down to the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and add these in anyway. But what we're going to be doing is actually quartering our mushrooms. So I'm just going to kind of clean some of these guys off. I have about 10 of them, and then flat on the cutting board, and then I can cut them into quarters, like so, and then put them right in. Clean off the mushroom. Turn this back down to like a medium low for the simmer. There we are. Another thing that you could do with your mushrooms is you can actually put them in as part of the cooking process. Like while you have your onions and stuff in there, you can put the mushrooms in. They'll start releasing some of their moisture. But in this dish, I don't really find that it makes that much of a difference since we're putting them in quarters. They're huge chunks of mushroom. They don't really cook down all that much. And what I like about them in this dish is they absorb a lot of this sauce and add a really, really yummy flavor to it. Get some of that dirt off. There we go. And mushrooms in. And I think I'll do one more mushroom. There we go. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and dunk them in just a bit. It'll help them start absorbing all of the moisture. And then last, before we add our chicken back in, I'm going to add a sprig of thyme. If you have a huge sprig like this, where it's like, you know, 5 or 6 sprigs all in one, you can just toss this in. This will be easy to find later. We can pull it out. We don't run the risk of putting, you know, a giant or several sprigs of thyme into somebody else's dish. I'm just going to nestle this right into the middle like so and let it sit. If you just have a bunch of individual sprigs of thyme like this, what you can do is use a little bit of kitchen twine, which you can absolutely find at your local grocery store. And if you can't find it, just go ask the butcher. They'll give it to you. And I'll bundle them up like so. And I'll just tie them into a little bunch. The only purpose for this is to make it super easy to find the thyme later and to pull out a bundle of it versus trying to, you know, fish out individual sprigs. But whichever way you want to do it is up to you. All right. Now that we're done with this, we're going to go ahead and grab our chicken and put it back into our pot. Now the chicken doesn't have to be covered because we're going to be covering the pan and either letting it simmer Or you can preheat an oven to like 325 or 350 and let it kind of braise in there. I'm going to go the cover it route. And what will end up happening is that steam and everything will cook the chicken from the top. There we go. Last little chicken leg. And then we'll get these mushrooms and everything distributed in all of the cracks. There we go. I'm just going to set these guys up on the top, wherever I can find some room for them. Perfect. So the coq au vin is pretty much done. We're just going to let it simmer covered on a burner. I'm not going to do this burner. I'm actually going to move it over to my stove and cook it over there. So, and again, bear with me this week. I did not have time to prepare. I'm running just a little bit behind. I'm going to get this moved over to the stove. On a low simmer heat. I'm actually going to leave it uncovered just for a second while I wait for it to come up to a simmer on that stove. And then we'll get started with our mashed potatoes. Now, I love garlic mashed potatoes. If you don't like garlic, or if you don't like garlic mashed potatoes, you do not have to add the garlic to the cream mixture that we're about to make. But that is where you develop the garlic flavor. If you add the garlic to the potatoes themselves, you're actually going to find that there is no, the very, very, very light garlic flavor, in my opinion, not good enough. I like to have a pretty noticeable, detectable garlic flavor in my garlic mashed potatoes. Oh, cool. This is already simmering. Let's go ahead and switch over here. So again, I've got this here on like a nice little low heat, just so that it can start simmering. I'm going to go ahead and reduce the temperature a little bit more and just set my lid on top. It doesn't have to be a tight fit or like a super tight seal. Just having this, oops, just having the lid on the chicken will keep the fluid cooking and braising, and everything will be beautifully done when we're ready. And it might boil over a little bit if it's as full as mine is, but we can just deal with that later. Come on. There we go. Low simmer. Cool. So, garlic mashed potatoes. Let's start with our saucepan. And what we're going to do with our saucepan is we're going to fill it with about, I'm going to say like a cup of heavy whipping cream. You want more cream than you think you need. And what we're going to do with the whipping cream is we're going to put it on like a medium, basically right at simmer temperature heat. So if you know where to turn your dial on your main like gas range to get to a simmer, turn it there. We want to heat up the cream. We don't want it to get to a roiling boil. That's where you can actually break the cream, and it's, I mean, heavy whipping cream, you'd have to do it quite a bit to get to that point where it separates or where it kind of like breaks, but it can introduce weird flavors. So don't let it get to that point. We are also going to add 3 cloves of garlic and 8 ounces of butter. I know that seems like a lot. Trust me. Go ahead and put in our butter. And we're just going to let that melt. And then we're going to just smash a couple of cloves of garlic We don't need to go through a garlic press or anything like that. We just want to get it crushed. So there's one. That's good. Here's two. That's good. Get that little bit of skin out. Come here, skin. And three. Now I'm actually going to take this cream and I'm going to put it over on another burner over there, bring it up to a simmer, and let it kind of go. That's really what I want to do with this. And let it come up to temperature here first, though. While I'm waiting for that to come up to temperature, I'm going to grab my potatoes, which I have a couple here. And you can absolutely adjust this to how many portions you want. Like if it's just you, just make one portion. Just use one potato. It is just me, but I'm going to be doing a couple of potatoes because then I get leftovers. So absolutely plan around that. If we look at our butter, we can see that it's starting to melt and it'll incorporate into the cream. With my potatoes, I'm going to go ahead and peel them. And I'm using Yukon Gold. I find that they're my favorite potatoes for mashed potatoes. Not quite as starchy as russets, which can make your mashed potatoes kind of gloopy. I'm not a fan of gloopy potatoes. I mean, they'll work. They're potatoes. They taste delicious either way. But I like silky smooth. And for me, russets work really well. You can also use some of those red potatoes. They make really awesome, like, I'll do 3/4 Yukon Gold potatoes, and I'll do 1/4 those red potatoes. And I find that that's a great ratio for mashed potatoes. And then if I'm doing the red potatoes, I actually will kind of lazily peel them, because then I can get some of that red peel in there. Gives it a little bit of an interesting visual flair with the red skin in there. And there we go. One potato. There's a couple of different ways to peel a mashed potato. You can actually put it on your cutting board and just cut down, or use a peeler to, peel down like this. This tends to work pretty well. You can go fairly fast because you can use your fingers as kind of a spindle, hold the potato in place, and then just peel down in one position as you rotate with your thumb. Also keeps your fingers out of the way of the peeler, which I know I've caught my fingers more with a peeler than I ever have with a knife. These things are dangerous, deadly dangerous. And then, just lay it flat and kind of go around. Same thing. It's a little bit more messy, but it works really well and you can go pretty quick. If you have to peel a ton of potatoes, for example, you're making a lot of mashed potatoes for, let's say, a holiday dinner or something like that, keep a bowl of water handy and take the potatoes straight from being peeled and put them into the bowl of water. It'll help keep them from browning. 2 potatoes. I'm keeping an eye on my butter over there, which is slowly melting, which is exactly what I want. There we are. Three potatoes. Potatoes also tend to be fairly slick when you're taking the skins off. So you may have noticed I juggled a potato. The first potato I was peeling, I was over the garbage can peeling it. And it almost slipped out of my hands, which is absolutely a thing. If you set it down on the cutting board, much less likely to happen. There we go. 3 potatoes. And then the last way to peel a potato, well, I mean, I'm sure there are several other ways. The last way I'm going to show you how to peel a potato is just to use a paring knife. If you have a small and sharp paring knife, don't try this if it's a dull paring knife, you can actually take the paring knife, set your thumb down on the potato, and then just very gently bring the paring knife back. If you have a peeler, I like using the peeler a little bit better. But you can sometimes get a bit more control with the paring knife, or if you have to take out a big section of potato for some reason, it goes a lot quicker with the paring knife. And just be very gentle. This is almost like shaving your face if you're a man, or shaving your legs if you're a woman or somebody who likes to do that, a cyclist perhaps. I have shaved my legs in the past as a cyclist. It's quite liberating if you haven't tried it. And you can tell that this is taking a little bit more time as well. And you can cut off big pieces of potato like this, whereas with a peeler, you're much less likely to do that. And of course, you can always start with a paring knife if you have a bit more kind of macro peeling to do. If you're making, shaping a potato for some reason or getting rid of some big blemishes on the potato, absolutely start with the paring knife. Get those out of the way. And then you can always switch to the peeler to do kind of the fine peels for your potato. All right. Our cream is starting to bubble over here, which is fine. It's not boiling bubbling. It's just starting to get kind of a foam on top, which means that it's right at the temperature that I want to move it over here. I'm just going to set it on one of the back burners on a very, very low heat. I want to keep it warm. Ideally, I want it like just at a simmer, not like a rolling simmer, not an aggressive simmer, not even a soft simmer. I really just want like a bubble here, a bubble there. I want it right at that line. So that's what I'm going to come over and kind of monitor every so often. I can see some steam coming out from my chicken pan, so I'm going to turn down the heat just a bit on that. I want to just make sure that it's, again, at a very low simmer. I do not want this thing boiling over. There we go. Potatoes. So, we're going to grab a pot. It does not have to be a gigantic, super deep pot. What we're going to do is take our potatoes, cut them into, I'm going to say quarters, something like that, about 2-inch by 2-inch size pieces. So in this case, I've got a bigger potato. So I'm going to cut it in half like this. And then I might cut it into, quarters this way so that they're all about the same size. This way they all cook about the same rate. If you have a bunch of huge pieces and a bunch of small pieces, the small pieces will start falling apart in the water before the big pieces are cooked through. So you just want to keep these all about the same size. I'm going to go ahead and put these right into the pot. And we're going to go over to the sink cam and we're going to just fill the pot here with water just to cover the potatoes. You don't need any more water than that. If you're using russet potatoes, it's a good idea to rinse them off once to get some of the excess starch off of them before boiling them. You don't have to, but I find that I get the best results with my potatoes when I do that. I don't worry so much with Yukon Golds because, again, a little bit less starchy. So let's head over here. The type of water you use doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and just use sink water because we're going to be straining it out at the end. And I really do mean like just barely covering the potatoes. and rearrange the potatoes if you can get them lower into the water. You really don't want as much water as you might think you do. I know like the old way of cooking mashed potatoes is just fill the pot with as much water as you can. Don't do that. And actually, I'm getting quite a bit of starch on these, so I am going to strain them once. For me, it really just depends on what the water looks like when I fill it up. If it's super, super cloudy, I'm going to strain it just once. If it's pretty clear, I'll just leave it. Also depends a little bit on how much of a hurry I'm in. If I'm not in a huge hurry, I'll strain any potatoes a couple times. All right, let's switch here. So we got our potatoes in here. You can see that they're just barely covered with water, which is what is ideal. It's just a skin, but we'll get it out. I like to season my water, and I like to make it very salty. The potatoes will absorb some of the salt, but they won't. You need the water to almost, I mean, I'm sure you've heard, if you do any kind of cooking, you want the water to taste like the sea. That's fairly accurate. I like to put like 2 tablespoons, sometimes 3, into the water. Just do 2.5. And then we're going to get this up to a boil. And what is boiling over there? Let's go see. All right, I'm turning my cream down because it is starting to froth up. And that is not what I want. And I'm just shaking it on the burner to get the cream to kind of simmer down, if you will, to get the bubbles to kind of break up and unfoam. And I'm turning it way down. I just want to keep it hot. And then looking at our coq au vin, I'm going to turn down the temperature on that as well, because with the lid, it is boiling pretty healthily. All right. Got our potatoes going, got our coq au vin over there braising, and we have our cream absorbing all of the delicious flavor from the garlic and the butter. So since we're making chicken with red wine, we may as well pour ourselves a glass of wine. There we go. Josh Sellers Cabernet Sauvignon, vintage 2019. I created my wines as a tribute to my dad, Josh. He's always on my mind. That's cute. Having recently lost my own father, I could absolutely see myself doing it. To Josh and to Jack. That is a good red wine. All right. Right now, we really have nothing to do. We can just kind of chill, let the chicken cook, let the cream stay very, very gently simmering. We want this to come up to a boil. That is what we're waiting on right now. Don't cover it, though. You want this to come up to a natural boil. If this gets too hot too quick, your potatoes can actually crack and start falling apart. Not what we're going for. Hey, Ryan, what's up, man? Cheers. Once this comes up to a boil, again, we want to bring it down to just kind of a bare simmer. We don't want this rolling, boiling with potatoes in there, because even if it comes up to a nice natural boil and the potatoes are cooking through, if it's going too aggressively, if it's boiling too aggressively, it can cause the potatoes to start falling apart because there's a lot of activity in there. Not what we're going for. We just want nice, hot, even heat so that the potatoes cook through gently. They'll just be kind of chilling there, cooking, boiling away. It'll be lovely. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the sink cam really quick. I am going to clean off some of the stuff that we've been using, and we can talk over here. And again, right now, there is a football game going on here in the Bay Area. I'm not sure if it's here or somewhere else in the country. It might be in Dallas. I'm not sure. But it is San Francisco 49ers versus the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not a huge football fan. Like I don't follow football. I understand it and I like watching it, but I don't have to see every game. I don't think that I don't think my hometown is the best team ever. I do root for them, absolutely. But I don't really follow them all that closely. But it is the playoffs. So kind of exciting that the 49ers have made it that far. We are going to do another Super Bowl special. We did one in 2020. It was 2020, or it was 2021. Don't remember. We made wings. We made deviled eggs. And we made caprese skewers. So almost like a little deconstructed caprese salad. It was a lot of fun. This year, we're going to be doing queso. We're going to be making a really, really lovely queso dip. We're probably going to make a couple of other things. I haven't really decided on what the entire spread will be, but I do want to make 2 or 3 things, again, so you can show up and have... we're going to do onion dip, too. French onion dip, which is super simple to make. So 2 dips and maybe something else a little bit more substantial for our Super Bowl special this year. We'll be doing that in a couple of weeks. That week will probably be a cook-along on either a Friday or that Saturday instead of our usual Sunday time. And that's also why I post them on the website. So if you go to cookalong.live, you can actually see when the next what the next cook-alongs are, what we're cooking, as well as when, just in case I have to maybe cancel one or something comes up and that weekend I won't be available, maybe I'll do one earlier in the week. Or in this case, I mean, Super Bowl Sunday, nobody's going to be watching a cook-along. Everybody's going to be watching the Super Bowl. Sorry, they're going to be watching the big game, whether they are football fans or not. So, you know, I'll probably do that the Friday before, give people some time to actually make the appetizers for the big game. And I think it'll just work a little bit better that way. And the queso we're going to be making is a pretty good one. You can put it in the fridge, you can kind of hold it for a day, and then just remelt it in the microwave later. Next week, I think we're going to be doing a gnocchi. Haven't done that before on the channel. Make that from scratch. Really yummy Italian dish. You can really dress it any way you want, very similar to pasta. In that sense, in that regard. And if you guys have suggestions, if there's a dish that you really want to see me make or you want to cook along live with me, go to cookalong.live. That's the website address, cookalong.live. And there is a link up at the top where you can suggest a recipe. And as long as it's not a recipe where, like, a lot of people in person in real life have asked me to make things like brisket or stew or things like that. The challenge with those dishes is there's a lot of kind of downtime. You know, you make the dish, you get it to a certain point, and then you got 2 hours to wait while it simmers away. Not really, I mean, I can fill time. Don't, believe me, I can fill time with a bunch of other stuff to make, but 2 hours, 2.5 hours, unless you're doing something like Thanksgiving, it's a lot of time to fill. You'd have like a full 3 or 4 course dinner, which we might do at some point. Just a little bit more difficult to plan and execute, especially in kind of a live stream setting, where the idea is you guys are cooking with me, and there aren't any camera tricks where I'm like pulling something out of the bottom oven that's already done, like they do on some of the other network shows. Now let's check our cream. That looks great. Gentle simmer. We'll check our chicken. Also gentle simmer. I'm going to turn this down even more because it is simmering. It's a gentle simmer, but it's still pretty aggressive. All right, let's go check on our potatoes. All right, potatoes are simmering. I'm going to bring the temperature down on this just to keep it at a very gentle simmer. Because again, I don't want this thing boiling very aggressively. I don't want the potatoes to start breaking apart. Santa Clara, yeah, yay. We just want to get these things cooked through. This shouldn't take very long, especially if you've cut them into smaller pieces. It can take anywhere from, I would say, 15 to 25 minutes. If you're using bigger potatoes or if you have bigger chunks, it'll take a little bit longer to cook all the way through. The best way to tell whether your potatoes are cooked all the way through is just to take a paring knife and don't push, but just gently kind of slide it down. If the paring knife goes through the potato, almost like it's not going through anything, the potato's cooked. At that point, we're going to drain, and then we're going to continue. Let's go ahead and get our paring knife ready. If you have a potato ricer, it is almost like a giant garlic press for potatoes. That is the single best way to get super, super smooth mashed potatoes. You put the potatoes in the ricer, you rice them into the pot or whatever bowl you're going to be using to kind of mix the potatoes with the butter and the cream, and that is the way to do it. If you don't, a potato masher works just fine. You just have to put in a little bit more effort to get things kind of, broken down to the point that you want them at. I do actually have a potato ricer myself, so I'll give you an idea of what that looks like. And quite literally, it's just like a giant garlic press. It's like this. It's got a thing for the potatoes in it. Very, very fine mesh kind of sieve at the bottom. And you scoop the potatoes into here, and you just mash them into whatever you're going to be mixing them in. This works great, and I think it was about 20 bucks at like Sur La Table or Amazon. You can probably find a really good one on Amazon for probably less than 20 bucks. If you like mashed potatoes and you love them silky smooth, I highly recommend picking one of these things up. Invest in that. It is amazing. If you like chunkier potatoes, or if you're doing potatoes with skins, don't try and run a skin through this, because it won't work. You may use a hand masher to mash the skin potatoes first if you like the the chunks of skin in your potatoes, and then run everything else through the actual ricer. The skins just gum that up. They kind of jam through the little holes on the bottom, and it's not very fun. The potato actually will start kind of squeezing up out of the top because it has nowhere to go in through the strainer. So couple things to keep in mind there. And yeah, like I said, right now we're just kind of chilling. I got a nice glass of wine. I got y'all online. At least I got Ryan online. Good hanging out with you, Mulj. And as things kind of simmer away, we'll adjust that just a bit. And really just kind of keep an eye on things, especially if you get to a point where there's a lull in your cooking. Just double check everything. This is simmering gently. Yep, cool. I'm going to go check on the cream. Is the cream simmering away gently? Yes, it is. It is not going too crazy. It actually looks really good. We put our garlic in the cream and we put our butter in the cream, so it's just looking amazing. We're also going to take a quick look at our chicken, which is braising away. That is also gently simmering. Looks great. We're going to keep that covered. Just double check on everything and make sure that nothing is getting away from you. This is also a good spot to double check your ingredients or your instructions and just make sure that you haven't missed anything. So my ingredients list for my coq au vin: 1 chicken, bacon, baby bella mushrooms, onion, shallots, flour, butter, red wine, thyme, and the vegetable broth or the chicken broth or the turkey broth. All of that we put in, so we're good on that. If you missed anything, absolutely go ahead and add it at this point. Or if you have to sear it off or something first, grab a small pan, sear it really quick, and put it into the dish. Our mashed potatoes, we've got our Yukon Golds going, we've got our garlic and our heavy cream and our butter all in the pot. just kind of simmering, staying warm. So we are like right at a good holding spot. 07. Love it. That's a pretty good wine. I am not disappointed. One thing that we might want to do, because I do like to kind of garnish my coq au vin with some fresh thyme, we may take our time and start kind of pulling off some of these sprigs, some of the leaves. I don't want to use an entire sprig on my chicken like that. I think that looks a little weird. I like to kind of dust it with the individual leaves. And all you have to do is kind of hold it from, like, let's say the second leaf cluster from the top, and then just kind of grip it like this, and just kind of pull your fingers back. And you get a couple of little leaf clusters, and then the top ones you can just kind of pull off like so. And you don't have to worry about getting every single individual leaf separated, because just the individual sprigs are small enough, or at least separate enough, that they will more or less look like individual leaves. So there we go. Get a little pile of these guys going on. And maybe you get, you know, 1 or 2 full sprigs of thyme if you want, just for around the edges if you're going to be serving it in a platter or something like that. But if you're just serving it individually like I am, just sprinkle on some leaves. You can use dried thyme, but it has a little bit of a different flavor. It actually does taste a little bit drier, a little bit less fresh. So maybe try it with both and see which one you like better. The flavor's a little bit more muted with dry thyme. That's a good way to describe it. And then you can just kind of run your fingers through a little bit. If you find any larger pieces, you can just kind of separate them. And then you have a nice sprinkling of thyme. All right, check our potatoes. I'm getting quite a bit of resistance still, so those are not done yet. You'll also notice that on some of these sprigs, maybe I'll do it over the potato ricer so you can see, you will have these offshooting branches where if you just kind of do this, you'll actually pull the branches off. So one thing you may do is actually just start with the branch and pull off the little leaves, especially if you have some downtime like right now. A great time to kind of get caught up on some of these what's the word? Aesthetic things. Individual thyme leaves, if you're doing something that has parsley or cilantro and you just want to pick off the leaves from that. That's a great way to make things look really, really pretty. Doesn't take a lot of effort, it's just a little bit of time. Not time, but like actual time. But it can take a dish from looking meh, okay, to looking really good just because you removed some of the stems. Go ahead and get that ready. And for those of you who are cooking at home, if you're cooking along with me, this might be a time where you're catching up with me, which is also fine. I've been cooking for a while. I've really been trying to level up my skill. I'm not a professional chef, but I think I work a little bit faster than most home cooks. A lot of times when I have friends and family cooking along with me, I get the feedback that I'm going a little bit too fast, which I try to kind of slow down. And sometimes it's good to have a little bit of downtime in the stream so that if you are falling a little bit behind, or if you haven't had a sip of wine yet, you can take that moment to just kind of chill and do that. And of course, if we're live, you can always ask me questions while we're in downtime. I'm happy to answer them, if I know the answers. I certainly don't know everything. Not yet, anyway. All right, got some nice thyme leaves here. I'm going to grab a ladle for our cream. You don't need one, but since I have one, I'm going to go ahead and use it. These ladles you can get on Amazon for like $2 each, probably even less. They're super convenient, and I just have a couple of 2-ounce ones, a 4-ounce one, an 8-ounce one, so that's like a cup, a half a cup, a quarter cup, and then a couple of smaller ones. Just gives you a little bit more control when you're working around sauces, if you want to, put something onto a plate, make it look nice. Not a necessity, but definitely a nice to have. All right, potatoes are almost cooked through. Still getting a little bit of resistance, but that time the knife went all the way through with just a little bit of pressure, so not much time left to go. Gonna go and triple check my cream and my chicken. You'll notice it did overflow just a bit over here, just because of how it's simmering and bubbling over there. Cream is looking good. Still just barely simmering. I think I'm actually going to turn it down even lower. Because now I don't care if it simmers, I just want to keep it warm until the potatoes are ready. Let's take a look at this. Ooh, that looks good. You'll notice that a lot of the browning on the chicken has actually come off, which is great because that means that that flavor is baked into the sauce. Go ahead and put that back on. And we will move back over here. Again, fair, gentle simmer. You do not want your potatoes falling apart as they're cooking. If it's going too rapidly or if it's going too aggressively, those potatoes will you'll have chunks everywhere. And I just kind of like to shake it up. It'll sometimes, if you have potatoes on top of each other, they'll kind of level themselves out in the water. I'm gonna take just a bit of the water, just make sure it's salty enough. I'm sure it is. I put 2.5 tablespoons of salt in there. Yep, tastes like the sea. Even with that 2.5 tablespoons, that does not taste super, super salty. You might actually be surprised that it's not quite as salty as you might think it is. All right, I think we're just about there on the potatoes. Maybe another minute or two. Mm-hmm. Yummy wine. My dog is looking at me because it's a half an hour past dinner time for him. It's like, yo, what gives? Where's my food? Human. Human, give me food. You know what you're saying, huh? Yeah, tail wag? I see it. All right, is there anything else that I want to do here? I can talk about the different ways of plating mashed potatoes. So, you can absolutely just take them out of the pot and spoon them into a plate. That works just fine. It looks good. It tastes good. It's great. It's fine. If you want to get a little bit bougie, grab a Ziploc bag. Once the potatoes are mashed, you can scoop them into the Ziploc bag, cut off a corner, and use it as a piping bag to kind of, I'm going to say, swell up your mashed potatoes. You'll get a really nice circle of potatoes that you can plate things around, Gives it a nice vertical dimension to the plate. And it actually makes it super easy if you have like multiple plates to go and scoop up. You're not sitting there like carrying this thing around like scoop, 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 you know, as you go down the line. You just have a little Ziploc bag. Makes it a little bit more efficient. I'm going to do that and just kind of show you what I mean. Totally not necessary. 100% optional. If you don't like wasting a Ziploc bag for that, don't do it. You can also use a piping bag if you want, but piping bags tend to be a lot more expensive than the Ziploc bags, and the Ziploc bags tend to work just as well. So it's really up to you how you want to do it. And of course, a spoon works just fine, or an ice cream scooper if you want to get a kind of similar effect. An ice cream scoop works just as well. All right, our potatoes, I think, are done. And I like to kind of poke through a couple of them of different sizes just to make sure that they're all soft all the way through. And these all feel that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this over to the sink, turn off our burner, and you can 100% use a colander if you want. Sometimes I do. But in this case, I'm just going to gently pour the water out until I decide that I'm going to use a colander. You know, sometimes you can get away with it, sometimes it doesn't quite work. So let's do this one. I'm going to put the colander actually into the pot, just at the bottom, and I'm going to use it to hold back the potatoes as I pour out the water. I don't necessarily want to pour the potatoes out into the colander. I just need to get the water out of the pot. So there we go. Potatoes are all drained, and they're going to dry out in here. Let's go back over here to the burner. We'll switch to this camera. We got our drained potatoes. They're in there kind of steaming, which is great. What we want to do is we're actually going to put them through the ricer. So we need a plate to put these guys on. I'm actually going to grab a little bowl. Just kind of pour these guys out into it. Like so. And set them to the side. Grab the ricer. Grab the potatoes. They are hot, so you might want to use a spoon for this. We're just going to put a couple of potatoes in the ricer. You do have to do this in batches because I don't think you can get a ricer that'll take a pound of potatoes. And we're going to do this. And then we're just going to go ahead and rice them right into the pan or the pot. There we go. And now round two. Same thing. Just grab a couple of potatoes. And don't worry about these guys getting cold. Potatoes tend to hold their heat for quite a while. Plus, all of the cream and the butter, we have it warm. We have it at temperature. So any heat that the potatoes lose here will very likely be made up by our hot butter and cream mixture. The butter and cream mixture is also going to take away some of the seasoning from the potatoes because we are not adding any salt to it, which is another reason why I like to season the water and get my potatoes a little bit more salty than you would normally want, because as we add that butter and cream mixture, it's going to reduce the amount of salt that you're going to be able to taste because there's more volume going into it. There we go. And you'll see that I'm not really rushing. There's not really a reason to. I just want to get everything mashed. There we go. And this ricer is really the secret to super silky smooth potatoes. If that's what you like. I guess it also goes worth mentioning, if you're using a piping bag or a Ziploc bag to kind of present your dishes or plate up your dishes, if you have a chunky mashed potato, if that's kind of your preference and you have big chunks of potato in there, make sure that the hole in the bag is big enough for those chunks to go through. Because I have done that before where I've made a very small or like a medium-sized hole but had some pretty good-sized chunks. And you just clog the bag and it just becomes frustrating. So just keep that in mind. All right. All of our potatoes are in and riced. Just going to scrape off the bottom of the ricer. Give that just a real quick little flattening out, and then all of this can go over to the sink. There we go. And what I'm going to do is just bring my cream mixture over, turn off the burner, and there we go. Now, with the cream mixture, I want the cream, I want the butter, so I'm going to give it a mix. I also don't want the chunks of garlic. So as I scoop this into the ladle, I'm going to kind of monitor and make sure that I don't grab a chunk of butter. A chunk of garlic. And we're going to add, we're going to start with about half of the cream. Something like that. There we go. And I'm going to, if you have one, grab a whisk. Otherwise, a spoon will work. A potato masher will also work. But I find for me, a whisk works just that much better. And I'm just going to go ahead and start stirring gently. And all of this is going to come together and look like mashed potatoes. And now what you're doing is controlling the consistency. So if I want mine to be thicker, I'm going to add less cream. I personally like mine to be more creamy, so I'm going to add more cream. I want them to be not quite liquid, but I do want them to be fairly viscous, almost like lava. And I'm just going to kind of gently incorporate that until it's more and more incorporated, and then I'm going to start whisking it a little bit faster and faster. And there we go. And I can smell the garlic already. It's just a subtle garlic aroma. It's not like it's, slamming me in the face with garlic flavor. But I am definitely getting that aroma. And that's kind of the texture that I want, or the viscosity that I want. If I switch over to here, you can see that as I kind of scoop it up with the whisk, it's not staying in the whisk, but it's also not pouring out of it, right? I'm just going to taste it for seasoning. And even with all that salt that we added earlier, it probably needs some salt. When we added 2.5 tablespoons to the water, the potatoes themselves were fairly salty, but after adding that cream and the butter, which we didn't salt at all, it really, really muted the flavor of that salt. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my whisk back. I'm done with the cream. I used probably 4/5 of it. And sometimes, depending on the potatoes you actually get or how much potato you have in the pan, you may use all of it. So just be aware of that. Hey, Cindy, how's it going? And I'm going to go ahead and just add a bit of seasoning. A little bit of salt. You can add chives to this if you want like garlic chivy mashed potatoes. Those are also super, super tasty. I am actually looking for, and I'm not sure if I have it. Oh, I do, but it's not cracked. Okay. Well, white peppercorns can go really, really well in mashed potatoes. They have a peppery flavor, a little bit of a different peppery flavor, but you don't see them as black specks so you can absolutely season with pepper. I don't have a separate grinder for those, so I'm not going to tonight, but just keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and stir the salt through. And you'll also notice that as this cools down, as the potatoes cool down, they are going to get thicker and thicker. There we go. Perfect. That is really, really good. I'm going to take a look at my chicken. We'll switch over to the sink cam. Take a quick look here. That is looking delicious. So I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off and let them simmer uncovered just for a second. I'm actually going to do this. Move that over there. Move this over here. And come back to this one. Perfect. And get this down a little bit, let it simmer again. And again, the chicken at this point should be cooked through. It's been simmering, it's been braising for about 20-25 minutes, which is awesome. That should cook your chicken all the way through, especially if it's covered. Or if you happen to throw it in the oven for, you know, like 325 or 350 for about 20-25 minutes, should be good to go. We might pull out one of the thighs and just double check. I'm not worried about it though. I'm going to let this simmer uncovered just so that it has a chance to thicken up a bit. You can see all of the steam that's coming up, that's moisture evaporating. And because we added that flour and the butter, it's going to start thickening up as the moisture leaves it. I'm going to let that kind of go. As I mentioned earlier, you can absolutely just scoop the mashed potatoes into your serving bowl. And pardon me for eating some of the potatoes that's all over the cutting board. It's good potato. I personally, especially if I'm doing something like this where I'm going to show it off, love to make it look good. Because I think that if something looks good, it's going to taste even better. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take a Ziploc bag, open it up, and use a spoon to just kind of scoop the potatoes into the bag. Again, if it's not super creamy or if it's not super viscous potato, make sure that you have a big enough hole in the bottom of the bag once you cut it so that the potato can go through. Or maybe just scooping it would be better. It might look better looking rustic if you scoop it out. But I'm just going to go ahead and fill the bag with as much potato as I think I'll need. And honestly, you can put all the potato in here because you can then put this bag inside another bag and just throw it in the fridge, and you're just ready to pipe out tomorrow once you reheat it. There we go. And I'm just going to squeeze out as much air as I can, like this, and I've got a nice little piping bag of mashed potato. Now I can take a paring knife, or I can use kitchen shears, or whatever. And I like to take off probably about, I'm going to say if I come back from the edge, I'm going back about a ½ an inch. So just this much of the corner. And what this does is it gives me a pretty huge void from where the mashed potatoes are going to come out from. I'm just going to set it down in the bottom of the plate, like so. So it's actually touching the bottom. And I'm going to squeeze from the top of the bag down and just pipe out a nice little round mountain of mashed potatoes. So there we go. Now I could just take this and go to the next plate if I had multiple plates. Potato, 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 potato. If I have a ton of mashed potatoes, I could get a bigger, like a gallon-sized bag. And then again, when I'm done with that, if I have any leftovers, I can just take that bag, put it inside of another Ziploc bag to keep it, sealed and kind of all in one, so it doesn't go all over the place in your fridge. And I can store it like that, reheat it tomorrow, and just go right back to piping. So those are your options. Those are some options with that. Now, with our chicken, I'm going to come over here and grab, for me, I'm a fan of the breast. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a breast piece. And you'll notice the wine has kind of dyed a lot of it a really, really yummy looking burgundy color. And I'm just going to set that on top of the potatoes like so. There we go. And then last but not least, since I use that giant sprig of thyme, I'm just going to go ahead and fish it out. Here it is. Get rid of it. Don't need it anymore. And I'm going to kind of move some of the mushrooms and the onions and everything that we have into this other side. And I'm going to rinse out my ladle that we used for the cream. I'm going to ladle out some of that sauce into the bowl. And this chicken is still like super hot, so you don't have to rush with this. The potatoes are still super hot because the cream that we added was still, simmering. So it was at boiling point. I'm just going to grab a bunch of this yummy wine sauce. I'm going to go ahead and pour it right over the chicken so that it fills up the bottom of the bowl, but also doesn't splatter up onto the potatoes. There we go. And then I might see if I can find another mushroom or two or some of the bacon. Just kind of fill it up on one side. There we are. And then last but not least, I'm going to grab some of my thyme and just sprinkle it over the chicken. Some of the fresh thyme. Some of the chicken and the veggies. If you have some chives, you can sprinkle it over the mashed potatoes. You can even sprinkle some of the thyme over the mashed potatoes. Or, if you have a long sprig of thyme, you could put that on top of the mashed potatoes, just to give it a little bit of extra flair. And that is, not that one, coq au vin with the beautiful silky mashed potatoes. Look at that. This is an absolutely delicious dish. Very, very comforting, very, very comfort food. Super tasty. I'm going to grab a knife and let y'all know what I think. And before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and actually flip some of my chicken pieces over so that they get evenly colored purple. And then this is leftovers for the rest of the week. Oh, yes. There we go. Look at that. And also at this point, I might actually cut up some of the, I have 4 additional mushrooms because I got 10. I might actually cut those up and put them in here just to have some more mushrooms. So let's go ahead and give this a bite. And I'm not a fan of the skin, so I'm going to remove it after it's been kind of braised. I think it's a little bit kind of meh. And you could do that before serving it up if you'd like to. Let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to grab a couple of pieces of mushroom, cut into my chicken breast here, which is cooked all the way through. I like to get a little bit of potato and kind of add it as like a little dressing. Yum. Now this is still steaming, so it's going to be hot. But I'm sure it's going to taste amazing. Yum, 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 yum. Mm-hmm. There we go. Great seasoning. Mushrooms are delicious. You can definitely taste the thyme in the sauce. If I had anything else to do, or if I was going to do anything differently on this, I might let this simmer uncovered just a little bit longer so that it could thicken up just a bit more. And I might have, again, I said you can kind of saute the mushrooms in the pan before you add all the liquids. I might have done that as well. Not to get any color on the mushrooms necessarily, but just to help them kind of release some of their moisture so that they absorb a little bit more of the wine flavor, because I'm getting a lot of mushroom flavor when I eat the mushrooms, but just kind of like a coating of wine. So, you know, just small things. But this dish is delicious. This is an excellent, excellent weekday thing to make, excellent weekend thing to make as well, and then giving you plenty of leftovers for the rest of the week. I am super excited to eat the rest of this dish tonight. Mm. Mm-hmm. Oh, mm. Yes, happiness. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining me for another Cook Along Live. I love doing these. Next week, we're going to be doing gnocchi. So, like always, go and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You'll see that video pop up probably on Wednesday when I have that live stream scheduled. Go look at cookalong.live if you want to go and see the ingredients list. You'll also see that recipe pop up beforehand, and you'll have a link to the video so that you can come here and watch it as well. And follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter if you really want to, and TikTok, cookalong.live. You can go and find me on any of those platforms. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will see you next week on another Cook Along Live. Goodbye.